So that's not Hannibal Lecter. But Hannibal, we're the E-team. I work with a team of awesome people at Pasco E-School, and we are the E-team. So we've each taken on an A-team name. So I'm Hannibal Smith. I'm not going to eat anyone today. So my presentation today is templates, themes, and all that jazz. So what I wanted to show you today is a solution that we have come up with in our institution that we kind of are fond of. And we wanted to share it out and let other people see it for whatever it's worth. And hopefully you will find that it's maybe something you want to use or adapt or take, because I want to give it to you if you're interested. So I'm going to show you what we did to jazz up our courses, how we use the global CSS and Google Fonts to do that, and then how we took it to the next step to put those things together and share those templates to Commons. So first, let me just tell you a little bit about Pasco eSchool. So I work for Pasco County Schools, which is a very large district in Florida. We have about approximately 70,000 students. But more specifically, I work for the district's virtual school. And Pasco eSchool, we have a K-5 program that is fully online curriculum. And then we also have secondary courses and anywhere from American Sign Language to creative writing to career ed and all kinds of other things. So we have some full-time students who do our program as their whole school experience. And then we have additionally across all of our programs something like 35,000 semester enrollments. So those aren't full-time students, but maybe it's like a 1/6 of a schedule, something like that. So, divide that number out and it's still a lot of kids. And we've been using Canvas since 2013. So why did we want to do more templates, right? So I'm sure you've seen other template solutions out there. There's a lot of really amazing solutions out there. The ones that we looked into were at times maybe a little bit too difficult for our K-12 teachers to use. They had too many features, or they were too focused on maybe the course design as it would work in a higher ed environment. So we're getting a lot of requests from teachers that they wanted the learning environment to be more fun. And I can appreciate that. I'm a fun kind of person. But the way they were handling the fun aspect is they were going into a PowerPoint and making a slide with a bunch of pictures on it and then taking a screenshot of that and putting it into their course. And so if anybody knows about accessibility, that's totally not accessible at all. And so we wanted to move away from that and create something that met their desire for funness, but was still accessible, which is really important. And we also learned that there was no one thing that fit everyone. Everyone wanted something just a little bit different. So we wanted to accommodate for that too. And we also knew our teachers are not HTML gurus, so asking them to do HTML view and then put in some code was not their favorite thing in the world. So let me show you what it looks like, and then we'll get into how we did it. So there's no music, but I just wanted to give you a quick scan of some of the different looks that we have for the different subjects. Art, blue, red. And then this last one is, we initially started this because it was very much like for our younger audience, our K-5 audience. And then as we started rolling out the solution, we realized, well, actually, this doesn't have to be all, rainbows and cute fingerprinting writing. We can make something for a much more grown-up audience, but still use the same concept. And so this is actually something that's going to be used for professional learning, but it's using the same strategy that we used for the younger audience. So what did we do to make this happen? So we used three elements. We used Google Fonts, which is what I'm going to show you first, how we did that. We used the account level CSS, and what we did specifically with the account level CSS is instead of doing specialized IDs in the CSS or specialized styles, we just took the things that were already in the rich content editor, like H2, H3, H4, and we are applying styles to those so that the teachers don't go in and don't have to go in and apply styles to it themselves. And then lastly, so that they don't have to go in and put anything code-wise in there, we're building collections of these pages and then pushing them to Commons so they can download it into their course and then have something to work with. Okay, so Google Fonts. What did we do to get this to work? So if you've ever used Google Fonts before in a web development environment, usually what Google Fonts wants you to do is it wants you to apply some code in the head tag of your HTML. We don't have the ability to do that per se in every page of Canvas because you don't have access to the head tag of that page. So you have to use CSS instead, and that's quirky because when you try to implement Google Fonts with CSS, it needs different files for different browsers. So it took us a while to figure out which combination of files would work in all browsers. And also, by default, when Google Fonts gives you the information, they give it to you as HTTP, which then creates a mixed content error. So when you go into Canvas and you look at that page, it's not showing the cutesy font that you thought you picked. So then you have to edit the code just a little bit to add an S on there, and Google will still go to the files if you change it to HTTPS, and then you don't get the mixed content errors. So the steps that we use to do this are you would go to the Google Fonts website, and once you're there, you'd navigate through, find the font that you like, and then you would select the Quick Use button for that font. And that will bring you to a page that tells you all the generic things about how you would use that font. But instead of looking at any of those things they tell you, you're gonna do one thing. You're gonna go to the area where it says add this code to your website, and you're gonna just grab that specific URL that I've highlighted there. You don't need that whole bit, you just need the URL. And then you're gonna paste that URL into Firefox. Now, why Firefox, you ask me? That is because the thing that it gets returned when you paste that into Firefox is the correct set of fonts that will work in all the browsers. If you paste it, it's browser specific. So if you paste it in Chrome or Safari or Internet Explorer, it will return to you what that browser needs. So if you grab it only from Safari, then it's only gonna work in Safari. But for whatever reason, Firefox pulls down all the ones that you need for it to work in all the browsers. So do that, paste it into Firefox. That's gonna return some code. It's gonna bring up, instead of a page in the browser, it's gonna give you a little bit of CSS. And you're gonna copy that code, and that's the code that's gonna get pasted into your custom CSS. So let me show you what that code looks like. Looks like this. It'll say @fontface at the top. And over here, where I've circled in yellow, green, or whatever that color is, that's where you would change the HTTP to the HTTPS. So if you do exactly that, copy it, change the S in there, and slap that in your custom CSS file, that's gonna be what allows you to use those Google Fonts. Once you are, all jazzed up about your Google Fonts, now you need to figure out how to use them and apply them to your pages. Now, the next part I'm gonna tell you about is how we use the CSS in our pages. Now, I wanna warn you that I'm an outside-of-the-box thinker. I know enough to be dangerous, but I am by no means a CSS expert of all time. So if you are, I apologize if I have done anything that violates the rules of goodness, and I encourage you to take my code and make it better. With that said, here's what we did. So again, as I mentioned, we wanted to make it so all the teachers had to do was use the rich content editor. Nothing else, no coding, just the rich content editor. So what we did is we took the ID selectors. We made an ID selector for a single div on the page, sometimes 2 divs, but not anything the teacher has to do. So we made a special ID that's going to control the whole theme. And we put that one little teeny ID on the whole page, and that's going to control the style for the whole page. And I'll show you what that means in a minute. The second thing we did is we paired that style with the elements, with the element selector. So we took the H3, the A tag, the H2 tag, all those tags that are available to you in the rich content editor, and we applied styles to those so that they get controlled by this CSS. And then the last thing that we did is we didn't want this filing to get out of control and hard to read, so we used a naming convention to make it so that if we ever wanted to make more themes, it's super easy because we just copy one of the other themes and just switch out the images that we want to use in that theme. So it takes about 3 seconds to make a new theme. So here's an example of one of the themes. So this is our Pasco Blue Stripes theme. So for our secondary programs, we wanted to create colors so they could match their school colors. So as you can see, this is what it looks like when you're looking at it in Canvas. It's saved, it's there. This is what it looks like when you go to the rich content editor. So over on the left-hand side, I'm terrible at left and right. The left-hand side, yeah, the left-hand side, that's what it looks like when you're editing the page. So all the teacher is going to have to do is you have to give them a little bit of a style guide. So if I go back right here, the sample that we give them tells them what to do. See how at the top it says, this is an H2, this is an H4. It tells them, so if they can just print that out, print out the sample, and then they know exactly what they have to apply. So then when they go in here, if they want to make one of those nifty blue bars, they just highlight it and hit H4 in the rich content editor. Okay? And if they want to make one of those nifty call-out boxes with the cute little lines on it, they just highlight the text and make it an H3. Now, how does this all happen? When you go to HTML view, at the very top, there's 2 little divs. And that Pasco Blue Stripes ID, that's what controls all the style on the page. Now, you're probably asking me, doesn't the teacher have to put that there? If we didn't have commons, yes, the teacher would have to put that there. But because we have commons, I can make a series of pages, put them in commons, and they can just download them, and then they just put their content in, whoopee-doo, and they don't have to like put any div stuff in there. That's already there, and it's because it only lives at the top and the bottom, it's very hard for them to totally mess up the page and delete it. So when they edit the page, as I was explaining, the things that are circled are things that we've styled. So when they edit the page, they just pick the thing that they want to style, a list, the header elements, the links and the images, and then they style it up. Now, what our strategy for what if you do totally mess it up, right? So the Canvas pages are wiki pages. So the genius element of that is that you've got this little gear with your view page history. And so we just tell them, if you make a change and you totally mess up your page, just go back to the previous version. It's 1 click, and then you're back. So what does it look like in mobile? In mobile browser, it looks exactly the same. We've applied our styles in a way that will react responsively, and so it looks the same, but just gets a little squishier. In the app, it doesn't. As if you know about the app isn't able currently to pull in styles from your custom CSS. But one of the reasons we used the H2, H3, H4 tags is because those represent a matter of importance, right? An H2 is more important than an H3 is more important than an H4. So by the way HTML works is that it's going to natively make an H2 bigger and more bold and an H4 slightly less big. So even though we don't get the cutesy styling, we still get a page that makes sense because they've implemented the H2s, H3s, H4s. So then what's next, right? We wanted to make sure that these could then be put together into collections of pages. So we would take different, our instructional design team could take these templates, and we could put the little div tags in there and make a nice teacher web page or a curriculum template, share that out to Commons, and then when they pull it in, all the styles are already applied and they just have to fill in the blanks. So here's an example of a modules page from a curriculum template that we made, where essentially we talked to our curriculum department and found out exactly what elements of each unit should have and built out those pages and then shared it to our Pasco Commons. Here's a teacher website. So this would be for the teachers that are breaking into Canvas. Obviously, we want teachers to use Canvas really interactively, engagingly with students, but sometimes they need a way to break in the door, right? They need a way to get into Canvas that's a little maybe easier to get started. And so this gives them the ability to just say, bloop, I want to pull this in and make it kind of like a teacher web page, just a place for my students to get and access resources, and it looks cute, and all I have to do is add my teacher-specific content. So again, we can share this to Commons for our institution. They can pull it in and get started. Now, one thing I do want to mention, this is an important thing, and that is that as you heard me describe, we're applying these styles to our custom CSS, right? So if I share these templates with anyone in my institution, they will look cute and pretty. If I share these templates that I've put together, not the cute look, but the collections of pages that we're sharing to Commons, if I were to share them with all of the Canvas, you would still get all the pages and what was said on those pages, but if you hadn't added my special CSS to your institution, then you wouldn't get all the cutesiness. So if you decide to use a similar solution to this in your institution, I would encourage you to share things to Commons with your users across your institution, but be careful about sharing it outside of your institution. I normally would be like, share everything outside of your institution, but just because these are specifically styled elements that are tied to your specific CSS, you just have to be careful with who you're sharing it with and make sure that they have the same styles that you have. So here's the magic area where you can download our code. So this is just a course in our instance of Canvas. And this course has an example of all the templates that are in this file we're sharing with you. And then at the bottom of the modules, it will say download this code. And it gives you the CSS code, the Google fonts, and all the image files that we used in, I think, the 5 or 6 templates that we are offering in this course. So I don't know that you would want to use them exactly because you might have different needs, but what I'm hoping is that you'll be able to look at it and take the idea back to your institution and style it how you would want to use in your school or community. So I know I have about 10 minutes left, so I wanted to make sure to leave enough time for questions. So I want to go ahead and open the floor up to questions and see what questions you have. The templates, the look of the templates or the collections of pages themselves? So some of the ones that were, so this blue one, the idea behind the color scheme ones were to match the high school color scheme. So we didn't want to do two-tone color schemes because everybody has 2 colors, and then we'd have like 70 different color schemes. So we just did single color schemes. And it turns out like some of the ones we developed for elementary, the high school teachers liked. Like a lot of the people like that one that looks like a composition book. That's a really popular one. And the ninja one that was in the original one, that's actually for our school where the eSchool Ninjas, go Ninjas. So that was for a lot of the other ones. But but you could legitimately, if you feel like this background looks too, juvenile or whatever, you have total control over that, because essentially the CSS, you can just pull the image out and leave it white or leave it a solid color or whatever. Yes, sorry. Oh no, sorry about that. I got a little clicky happy. Give me one sec. Oh man, there it is. Okay. You had a question. Okay. So the question is, how do you get to your custom CSS for your institution? So in your institution's account, either for the master root account or for the sub account, if you have access as an admin to that sub account, you can go to the settings for that sub account or account, and about 3/4 of the way down the page is 2 boxes, one that says add custom CSS and one that says add custom JavaScript. And essentially you put in a URL to where your custom CSS is. So if you have somewhere at your institution where you could host a little that little CSS file, you would put it there and you would copy the link, and then you would paste it right into that box. I suppose you could. It doesn't work? Okay. I know that at one point, I don't want to say this, but at one point I think maybe Canvas would sometimes host your, yes, Amy is saying yes. I think if you don't have a place where you can host your CSS or JavaScript files, Canvas will post them for you. Yes. Yes, you. Oh, from Commons. Okay, good question. So the question is, are these downloaded as pages or courses? So a little bit of both. So we have for example, for our eSchool folks, their courses are all different, but we wanted them all to have the same homepage. So we upload one page to the Commons that's a templated homepage. For other people, we've uploaded a whole course to the Commons that's built out with all these templated pages in it. Like, for example, that curriculum template is like a whole entire giant course with multiple units in it that we've put up to the Commons with the templates applied to them. And then sometimes we'll just do a little module, like this is a module, and we'll send those up to the Commons. So it's really, the use of the styles is flexible, so you can use it in any collection of pages that you want. Correct. So the question is, the images live on some other place, and that's right. So I've kept my images very small. All those things that are big backgrounds are repeated, small versions of repeated images. So, so essentially I wanted to keep the load time very short. So we have a little server that we have that has a secure HTTPS server. It's just a little web server, and so we just throw all the stuff up on there, and then put the link in our custom CSS line, and off we go. Sure. Yes, in the back. That's a great question. The question is, am I concerned at all about the new look of Canvas? I think it's always something you have to look out for. I think because this is just leveraging CSS and not leveraging like elements of the JavaScript, it's going to be better. And again, because we're only doing things like adding styles to H3, H4, H5, those things are going to continue to live in the rich content editor. All we've done is sort of overloaded those elements of the rich content editor, and I imagine even in the new look of Canvas that the rich content editor is still going to be around. So we haven't used more complex elements than that would I think be affected by that, but you never know. Yes. Good question. So the question was, did Canvas create the custom CSS for me? No, I'm just a nerd, and I knew enough about CSS to be dangerous. But if you look at the code that I have there, I think you can learn a little bit about it. And the thing that's nice about it is that if you like the same look but just wanted to flip out the picture or flip out the color, you could leave it exactly as it was, but just change it out to meet your look that you wanted. Any other questions? I think we're down to... Mm-hmm. So the question is, I was talking about pages, but could you use it in assignments or somewhere else that the rich content editor is? And the answer is yes, you can use it anywhere the rich content editor is. You just have to make sure those div tags are there, and then that will get saved when you share to Commons or pass it on to a teacher or whatever. Or if you're the instructional designer, you just put those two little lines of code at the top and bottom, and it styles the whole page, assignment, directions of, quiz, syllabus, wherever there's rich content editor. Last question, yes. Say one more time, I didn't quite hear you. I see what you're saying. Templates overwriting content that's in pages. So we are not, we haven't been, I don't think that would be an issue. So what I would say is most of the people that are pulling down stuff from Commons are pulling it into a brand new course. If they were pulling it into a course that had existing content, it would still be added as new content because it wouldn't be linked to their existing content. If you were trying to take a page that had existing content and style it with this, you actually do have to do a little bit of HTML. And what you would do is you would take your existing page, flip it to HTML view, and just put those two little div tags at the top and two little div tags at the bottom, save it, and then that would style the whole page. But it doesn't overwrite any of the content. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you staying till 5:30 on the last day. Have a great night.